All right, sounds like we're good to go. First off, I want to say thank you guys so much for being here. I know your time is valuable, so appreciate that. Hopefully you guys have been having a good time so far. My name is Rosario. I'm an advanced designer. I'm going to explain what that means in a little bit, but by seeing these cool graphics here, right, this kind of starts to set the tone to what I want to present today. So we're going to talk about Twinmotion, right, and designing for the future. So it's a tool that I'm sure you guys have already seen covered plenty during the presentation. So I'm going to go into how it benefits me and our process at the company that I work for and beyond, right, because I do other projects as well. So in our presentation today, I'm going to go over who I am, what I do, a little bit of what I do. I'm going to talk about what is advanced design. It's kind of an elusive art to some. It might imply in the title what that might be, but I want to clear that up so you guys kind of get a sense of what that is. What is Twinmotion and why is it important in our world in advanced design? A little bit of the process or a concept process of how concepts go to final presentation, especially within an executive environment, which is what I work in. And then a little bit of the landscape that we're looking into in the future with tools like Twinmotion and other tools like AI tools and visual things like that. And then we'll just open it up to conversation from there. Sound good? Awesome. So to kick things off, basically I want to state the purpose of what this presentation is and what advanced design really means. Without knowing it, you guys are all advanced designers, and I'm going to show what that means in a little bit. But basically, advanced design and Twinmotion can work together in creating concepts, everything from rough, low fidelity type concepts in the design process, and we can use that later on to create higher fidelity images and concepts. So it's all about communication, right? And we all do it in our daily lives, so we'll go into that in a little bit. So let's kick off with a little reel, and this will kind of give you a sense of who I am and what I do. So that's my little sizzle reel. I know you guys probably saw some images that were a little bit beyond Twinmotion. I'll explain what that means in a minute. When we talk about advanced design and what I do, so first off, I work at a company called Brunswick Corporation, right? That's my day job. That's what pays most of the bills. But what's exciting about working at Brunswick is Brunswick is a technology leader in the recreational marine space, right? So we're the biggest company in terms of recreational marine. There'll be a slide for that after this. But in terms of what I do at Brunswick, we talk about designing concepts that are born from strategy, right? So advanced design deals with things that come in the future, right? You have production design. Advanced design goes into telling stories through visuals and presentation. That's a big part of my job at Brunswick. We present ideas across the company. So We're talking about engineers, designers, marketing, VPs, you name it, the CEO. We present directly to Dave, excellent guy. We help develop corporate foresight strategy, right? So things that deal with how do we move in the future. That is something that we cover as well in advanced design. And then another exciting part about the job and the reason we're here today with this presentation is I like to discover, and we like to discover, new tools and technology that can help advance not only our business, but empower our customers, right? So in advanced design, we do a lot, right? It's not just, cool concepts and fancy presentations. We put a lot of research into figuring out what the future is. And a little background on Brunswick itself, just so you kind of get a sense, because I'm sure you might have heard the name float around. I'll explain that in a minute. But like I mentioned before, we're the world's leading recreational marine corporation. So that's everything from propulsion to million-dollar boats, right? We do everything up to 50-foot boats. It's a company that's over 100 years old. I actually did a little read and I was a little off. We're actually closer to 180 years old. So it's been around for a while. We have 60 industry-leading brands in the marine space. So if you're into boating or if you've been around the boating space, you've probably seen one of our brands. $5 billion a year in annual revenue. We operate in 27 different countries. And most importantly, we're not a bowling company. So if you've heard of Brunswick, the bowling company, totally different thing, right? We get asked that a lot. So that's a little overview of the company itself. Pretty big player, lots at stake, right? But excellent place to work and do the work that we do. So what is advanced design? Let's get into it, right? So I kind of give you an idea, some of the pretty things about advanced design, but I'm going to open this up with some questions to you, because now we're going to tie the dots into how you're an advanced designer. You just don't know it yet, right? So here's some questions for you, and it can be rhetorical. You don't have to shout it out loud, right? Have you ever imagined what your life looked like 5, 10 years from now? Probably, maybe at some point, right? Have you spent time researching something big that you want to buy, a house, a car, you name it? Probably might have done that, right? Have you tried to explain somebody or to somebody a big idea, right? Oh man, I'm waking up, I gotta talk to somebody about this. This is gonna be awesome, whatever it is, in your job, at home. And then this one hits close to home. Have you ever moved your sofa and blown out your back trying to figure out, okay, it looks a little bit better in this corner, right? Have you guys been through that pain before? Because I'm still recovering from mine. If you've done any of this, congratulations, you're a visionary. You are an advanced designer. So basically, what does that mean? We are the scouts of tomorrow's dream. So pretty much that means we involve in communicating high-level concept to senior decision makers, right? We develop forward-looking concepts months, usually years in advance, right? So the capabilities that we don't know that we have today, our job is to find out what that is. What can we do, right, with the technology of the future, and how can we bring that into our business, right? How can we shape a future strategy for a leading Fortune 500 company? That's a challenging ask, right? And how do we collaborate closely with other divisions across the company to make these concepts real, right? Because part of the challenge of what we do is it's not only about presenting the good idea, it's understanding how to get through your other teams to make that real, right? So for example, I might have a cool idea on a boat concept or a system, but if engineering can't get their head around it, right, and the business strategy part and all the pieces that work, it's just a fancy idea, right? So these are very important aspects and key points to being an advanced designer. And then, of course, like I mentioned before, we research emerging technologies in a lot of different ways. There might be tools, for example, like Twinmotion, that could enable our design teams to communicate better, right? We might be able to give them the option of rendering something quick, straight from Rhino, which is what we use a lot, straight from Rhino through Twinmotion, and within a day, you can have a low fidelity concept that you can present to maybe your design leadership, a marketing team, you name it, and not only present it, but present it well with, assets and a world built around it fairly quickly, right? So that's a big asset to us, especially in the world of doing things quickly, trying to get ideas out quickly. So that's kind of the nutshell of what advanced design is. I'm going to walk you through a little kind of concept process of what, that might look like on some projects. Obviously, there's a lot of top secret stuff. This is the other side of me. So you guys have heard a little bit about what I do at Brunswick. Outside of Brunswick, I'm a concept designer. It's just something I've always loved to do. I love to imagine, new ideas, new designs for things, new systems. So that's something that I do outside of work. You could call it for fun, but concept design, creative consulting. I'm actually proud to say that I was invited to be one of the outside consultants for the program itself, which is a lot of fun. So we contribute to how do we make the tool better, right? Giving industry input. So I'm an active member of that, along with a lot of other great professionals in that world. And then something that I've been getting into a little bit more recently, which is what you saw in the demo reel, is AI storytelling, right? So Twinmotion is great because it can start to create high quality visuals and things like that. But what I've learned more than anything else, and more than just the tool, is the power of good storytelling is really what moves a lot of our concepts forward, right? The idea can be great if you do your homework and you do the research and all the things that we do with trends and foresight strategy work. Those are important. But if you're able to get through emotionally to somebody in the visual, in the presentation, then that's where powerful conversations are made, right? So that's a lesson that we've learned over the last few years, building our process, right? Because these are, this is a learning strategy, but Twinmotion has been a big part of that in setting up our story, as well as the AI storytelling part of it. So when you saw those cool kind of otherworldly scenes and stuff in the demo reel, that's something that I've been getting into a lot as well. Working with some Hollywood agencies on that, learning a lot on that front, and it's a passion of mine as well. So that's the other side of me. I have a website called Young Fiction where I do kind of concept stories and some of it, with Hollywood experimental type of people. But just another passion of mine, and it mixes well within the advanced design, future storytelling, so on and so forth, right? And then it's funny because when I'm talking to you here today, right? But when I'm at a party and people kind of learn about what I do and that's so cool, my go-to answer always is, it's under NDA, right? I'm sure you guys have heard this before, got the Mission Impossible in there. But that's a lot of the coolest stuff that I do. It's all under wraps, right? A lot of what we do is NDA, but thought I'd throw my little joke slide in there. So just a quick recap. I know you guys have probably seen this before, especially if you've gone through a few of the other Twinmotion, speeches and all that. Quick recap, what is Twinmotion? Simply put, it's an awesome, simple to use 3D visualization platform, right? It's I call it baby Unreal, because a lot of the functions and all that, work within the Unreal platform and, things like Datasmith and transferring information. Of course, it's made by Epic Games. So Twinmotion is something quick and easy, especially for design teams and designers like myself, to get into in terms of communicating visual ideas and a lot more, right? You can do VR and things like that with it, just in case you didn't already know what Twinmotion was. And this is just, some concept work that I've done in the background. So why does it matter? I think this is a very important slide. In the sense of how we found it, right? So just by happenstance, we have a great relationship at Brunswick with Epic Games. We use Unreal Engine for a lot of other aspects of our work, right? Marketing, trade shows, big, promotions, things like that. So when we discovered as a design team, what Twinmotion does and why we would use it, to us it matters because it's all about ease, right? So our world is not necessarily about getting hung up on the technical details of how to use a program, because we know that Unreal, for example, is an amazing, and it's in depth, and you can code in it. You can do almost anything you want with Unreal. So when we were looking at an alternate for something to do with an easy use case, Twinmotion fit the bill, right? So it's easy because it has a great interface. It's something that you can, get up and running fairly quickly. It enhances communication within our teams, right? Because it's so easy to use and you can build out your scenes and things like that. And it's a great iteration tool. That's one of the things that caught my attention when I started using it. How quickly you can install, you can get it up and running. And if you're using, almost any CAD program, how quickly you can get your models in, out, start building out your scenes, even if it's at a rough level at first, because that's what it takes to start selling your idea, right? Sketches are always a part of the process, but it's what we can do beyond that where I think Twinmotion really, really fit the bill. And we're gonna get a chance to see that here in a second. So these are some of the points to that, right? The real-time rendering is great, animation capabilities and how quickly you can do that. All of that are essential tools for especially in an executive world, getting presentations up and running quickly. So let me walk you through a little bit of how this works at Brunswick, at least for us, right? Because you've seen this before in the automotive world when you see a concept roll out, when they show a cool idea. Every company has their own way of doing this. This is a high-level view of how we, generally go through a process. So it always starts, the important thing is, it always starts through strategic foresight, meaning we go through trend analysis. We do things like review consumer insights, right? Obviously, the consumer is our number one target in our business. If the customer is happy with the future and what they have now, we're gonna be happy as a company, right? So that's very important. And then we also go into what we call scenario thinking. What does the future hold, or what does the potential future hold, right? All these other tools that we use are not gonna tell us how to predict the future, but they're gonna give us a good idea of what's coming so we can be ready for that future. And not only ready, so we can already start designing some possible scenarios if that's the way the future plays out. So this is almost our crystal ball process. But of course, we have to go through the motions of sharing the idea, building it out. So that's how it always starts, right? So I say I'm Lee Rosario, the advanced designer. I'm gonna go ahead and take that information. I work with my boss and my leadership, and we start roughing out ideas, right? So these are some cool, fun to show sketches, right? This is not a real product, so feel free to snapshot everything you want. But it always starts at the sketch, right? It always starts at the rough idea. And then from there we go, okay, we're starting to get a low, like a low commitment kind of process going, so we can just quickly iterate ideas and figure out what the concept might be, right? So we start with the rough idea, and then we start bringing in the tools. So this is where Twinmotion and the use of Twinmotion in our process starts getting interesting, because first we start with Twinmotion to explore and visualize early design concepts. We combine rough CAD models with Twinmotion assets and AI tools to kind of go through this kind of iterative circular process to see where the concept can go. So for example, I might rough something out in Rhino. I bring it into Twinmotion to kind of give it an environment, give it an aesthetic. And then I might say, I could bring it into something like VisCom. I don't know if you've heard of VisCom before, but it's an amazing AI design-focused AI platform. And this starts letting me see an idea of, okay, I don't have to spend the hours or the week or two to sketch out these ideas. I can literally do this in a day or two, right? Model it out, let AI kind of give me some iterative sketches over it, and I can start getting a sense of, okay, that might be a good idea. Let's see where we can take it from here, right? So we continue this circular process. And what's great is I can continue to model. I can continue to update my CAD model in Twinmotion, and the process continues, right? So it's a pretty circular process, and you can see that it evolves from there, right? So as we go through this kind of design spiral, the model starts kind of fleshing itself out. So we move from lo-fi, it's still kind of in a lo-fi stage, but now it becomes something a little bit formalized, right? By this time, We've had a few design meetings over it. We're talking closely with design leadership and saying, okay, based on our research, right, based on the stuff that we've talked about in the beginning, is this hitting the mark, right? Is our concept hitting the mark of what our idea is, right? When we first launched the project, we might course correct along the way, but what's great is as fast as that meeting says, well, we love where this concept is going, we might want to change this, this, and this because we've noticed that consumers might want that, right? You can say, okay, that's cool, I can update that and do that in a day, right? So literally in the process of a few hours, maybe a day or two, I can say, I'll update that concept and we'll have a new presentation out for you at the end of the week. Again, that's another process where Twinmotion really comes into play because as fast as I can get the updates done in Rhino, I can bring it back into Twinmotion, re-render, maybe pass some more AI into it, and then we have a little bit more of a higher fidelity concept at that point. So as this evolves and as it matures, then you start kind of getting into the highly or the more refined versions of presentation, right? So in this stage, we're still going through the circular process, right? Twinmotion is still very much a part of the design process, but maybe now its role is changing a little bit, right? So before, where I was just dropping maybe some assets, building out my scene, getting some lighting, all the things that kind of sell my idea, now it can start taking a more formalized process and I can start acting more as a CGI artist, right? And I can start locking in more high fidelity renders. So for example, and this is just a representation of what might come out of Twinmotion, a little bit more kind of dolled up, right? But the idea is once we get to advanced concept development, now we're having different conversations, right? So in the beginning, it was about finding and exploring the idea. As you go through it and as you go through the meetings, you're hashing out, okay, I see where this idea is going. We're course correcting along the way, and course correcting in the sense of we're trying to hit the marks of what business strategy wants to hear or potentially wants to hear. We're also coordinating with engineers, designers, and saying, okay, we're getting good buy-in from them. So by the time we hit the advanced, stage of the concept, now we're really figuring out how do we need to set this visual, this presentation up to hit the home run, right? By this point, we might have some stats to throw in, that help sell our idea, right? We might have more refined, animations and things to give a better sense of our more fleshed out concept, which is why now you're seeing kind of an animation to this. This is where we're really trying to seal and close the box, so to speak, so we can finalize our concept. So by the time we get to our final presentation, this is where another place where Twinmotion can evolve and we can say, okay, well, by this stage, we finalized our design and our concept, right? So now it's a matter of finalizing our visual, refining it, figuring out, okay, well, how do we need to show this to get to the high executive level to really say, okay, this is the concept we're going for. We've gone through the checkpoint meetings. What's the big cinematic finish, right? So in a sense, what's interesting about this process and tools like Twinmotion is in the beginning, it was a rough kind of concept tool and it worked great for that. In the middle of the process, Twinmotion helped refine and continue being a design tool in the sense of it's a great way to create renders to feed into AI, which might give more design ideas and more concept ideas. So by the time we hit the final presentation, we can now use it on the cinematic level and say, okay, we already had our scene set up, right? How can we create a final presentation with animation, right? With the video editing that we do and, in terms of like Adobe tools and stuff like that. How do we create this little cinematic trailer, so to speak, to really get you to emotionally buy in to the concept? So these are the conversations we're having in our final presentation. So this graphic, for example, this was AI generated, but what usually tends to happen is in our final presentation, we might combine a set of different types of media, right? So for example, I could easily combine this clip with some Twinmotion animations, right, with some other graphics to say, we're going to build this presentation, we're going to show it to our CEO, we're going to show it to the what we call the SMT, right, our high-level executives. And basically what we're saying at that point is, after all our research, after all our work, this is our concept. What do you think? And then, of course, with slides and things that say, this is how it feeds into our business and how we can plan for the future, strategy type slides and things like that. But the whole point is, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's not just the visual, right? It's about connecting the emotional part of your concept to the business strategy and the realism of how are we going to be able to do this, right? And if I learned anything, at least in our company, is 9 times out of 10, that visual, that production value, if you will, is a very important part to selling the idea. Before, tools like Twinmotion, it was harder to do things with just still renders and things like that, just sketches, which goes a long way. But when we add the speed and the efficiency and the impact of tools like, for example, in this one, Kling AI, mixed with Twinmotion and creating high fidelity renders, that's when we started seeing a lot of change. And that's when a lot of buy-in started happening with a lot of bigger decisions. And again, these are decisions that ultimately mean millions of dollars, 5, 10, 15 years of strategy, things like that. So it's a very important tool in how we've moved a business like Brunswick. And this is just one example. But think about this in any concept level, right? We're talking about boats here, but look at the automotive industry. If you've heard of Skunk Works, right? Lockheed, I believe Lockheed Martin. You look at these companies that involve future design, future strategy. The process is somewhat the same, right? We're aiming for a target that might be moving. We don't know necessarily what it is, but again, through storytelling, visuals, strategy, these are the ways we figure it out to the ultimate products that you see on the road or in the sky today, or in the water, in our case, right? So coming towards the end of this, what comes next? And this is also part, like I mentioned before, part of what we do in advanced design. We look to the future, not just in terms of our products, our experiences, but we look to the future in terms of what do the tools themselves do? Obviously, Twinmotion is a big part of our pipeline. Unreal is going to continue to be a big part of our pipeline, if not even more. I was actually talking to a couple of our CGI artists that are here in the event this week, and they were getting into Unreal in ways that we haven't used before. And those are all tools that are very important, and I'm sure you've seen in other presentations, to not only getting ideas out quickly, but it's also about time, cost, efficiency, things like that. So for us, we think about that, right? So what comes next? First, what gets me excited is where processing power is going, right? These things can be very process heavy, especially with GPU processing and things like that. But why is that exciting for us? Especially with NVIDIA and their the advancements they're making, AMD's following suit as well. The processing landscape is exciting for us because we can visualize ideas faster. And with that sense of real-time rendering, that's very important, especially for concept projects that we want to get out pretty quickly to start. The sooner we can get them out to the teams, the faster they can react to them. So that's a very important one for us. Storytelling. The fact that these new tools, not just with Twinmotion and what you can do with it and Unreal, but things like VR, right? With VR presentations and XR capabilities, those are exciting for us because these are ways to immerse our audience, right? Whether it's on a remote call, if it's in person, which we do a lot of VR presentations for different setups and things like that. Super exciting on that front, and a lot of technology coming on that. We're excited with tools like Twinmotion and AI because of the productivity it's going to bring. That's another thing. With these tools, if we can create products faster and iterate faster in a challenging landscape, right? I know we've heard a lot about, financial hardships and things like that. That's going to be key, right? Because if our teams can do a lot more with less and without stressing them out, right, with these tools that help, that's going to be a big focus of our target, right? And of course, there's cost involved into things. So in terms of productivity, that's going to be a huge win for us. Of course, we've heard this a lot, the AI revolution. It's happening as we speak. Carefully, we're going into this space, right? We're excited about that because, again, it supercharges the process. I've actually attended a bunch of great meetings this week that really kind of reinforces that with a lot of the awesome work that's happening out there. But we're excited about that, and we're figuring it out because, again, AI in itself is, we're not trying to replace things, but the fact that it can supercharge our process and create even more emotional responses quickly is a big tool for us, especially when we're selling concepts that don't exist and people need to figure out how it works in an imaginary world until we can make it real, right? So that's a big one for us that we're excited about. We're seeing a lot more of the blurring lines, so that's another thing too. So it used to be that as a designer, that's what you were. You were a designer, you might have sketched, you might have done, paper renders and things like that, sketched renders. That evolved into being able to do CGI, tools like V-Ray, Unreal, of course, Keyshot, you name it, which is a little bit of what we're still doing today, and it's still very much relevant. But as we're looking into the future, it's interesting because we're seeing some of these job titles blur out, right? The lines are not so defined anymore. You might be a designer, but at the same time, you might find yourself accidentally becoming an AI prompter, right? You might become a prompt engineer just out of necessity. For example, with the tool that I showed earlier, which is called VisCom, we're starting to see the benefits of not only the regular design process, but how do we bring that design into a tool like VisCom, let AI kind of flash it out, right? Learn how to prompt it, learn how to get the results, right? And some of the iterations that we want out of it. And in the process there, suddenly you realize, wait a minute, I'm not just a designer anymore, I'm becoming a visual prompt engineer, right? So, and it kind of evolves naturally. So to that example, we're seeing a lot of job titles, right? We're seeing a lot of positions within our design process kind of blurring those lines. For example, myself, out of necessity, I do design work, but at the same time, I get a kick out of, and I learned how to do AI visual storytelling. So that's another aspect, the CGI rendering. So as a CGI artist, that was another important one. So we're seeing a lot more of that, and we're excited to see how that's going to evolve for our business in the future. And then, to me, I think one of the most important things of what we're going to see in the future with tools like, again, with Twinmotion and Unreal and things like that, is the creative freedom that it gives you, right? You're not constrained to just regular sketching or necessarily a lot of resource-heavy type of task. The freedom that you're going to get by these other tools assisting you is going to let you focus more on the idea, on executing the idea, and then on coming out with an emotional impact that could really sell that idea and move it forward. So with that, keeping it short and simple, thank you guys so much. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if I don't have the answer, I'm happy to get them for you. So with that, thank you guys so much.